What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. So I am super excited to be making this video about our travel experience in Lisbon. Lisbon will always be so special to me because this trip was my very first trip to Europe. But in addition to that, it was my very first time traveling with a man. And unbeknownst to me, that man would then go on to become my husband, the father of my child, the love of my life, all that sweet and gushy stuff. So I can't hear the word Lisbon without getting the warm and fuzzies. And because of that, Lisbon will always have a special place in my heart. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing why we selected Lisbon. I'll be going over some of the things that we did, some tips for traveling, and I'll also be touching on our experience as an interracial couple in Europe. I am obviously Black, of African, Ghanaian descent, but my husband is Chinese. So I'll be touching on what that experience was like for both of us. So stay tuned and let's get into it. So the first thing I want to mention is that this trip happened during the COVID pandemic, so it made things kind of challenging. We really wanted to find a place that would be safe and a place that had high vaccination rates. So after doing some research, we found that Lisbon, or Portugal, had an 84% vaccination rate. My husband and I at the time were both vaccinated, so that solved our first problem. So after seeing that this country had a very high vaccination rate, it put Lisbon at the top of our list. We did some more research and we determined that Lisbon was very affordable. It was just past their tourist season. We traveled in November. The weather was decent, so we decided to travel to Lisbon. So considering everything was new to me, the travel to Lisbon was quite seamless. So upon landing, first thing we did was find a mobile phone kiosk, and there we purchased a SIM card, a European SIM card. And this allowed us to have internet data so that we would be able to use our phone freely because we didn't want to incur roaming charges, which are absolutely criminal. So if you are traveling to Lisbon or Europe in general, I would recommend getting some type of prepaid SIM card so you can avoid those roaming charges. During the duration of our trip, we did book 3 different hotels while in Lisbon. 2 were actually in Lisbon, and then one of them was a villa in Sintra, which I'll be touching on a little bit later in the video. So the first hotel was in the neighborhood of Chiado. Prior to booking any accommodations, we did do some research. There are a bunch of different neighborhoods and districts in Lisbon. Each of them have their own vibe. It was really important to us to find a neighborhood that not only had a vibe that represented both of us, that was walkable, that was close to public transportation and sites and attractions. Based on all that criteria, that is why we selected the hotels that we did. So the first one was in the area of Chiado. So like I said, walkability was really, really important to us. We didn't plan to rent a car, so we wanted to make sure that we would be able to get to where we needed to get to on foot. So with that being said, we ended up taking a cab from the airport to the hotel when we first landed, and it ended up costing us about 30 euros, which is about $45 Canadian. And at the time, my husband did think it was a little bit weird. The cab driver was kind of taking us on different routes. And when he said 30 euros, we were kind of like, okay, that's a bit expensive, but we're new here, so we'll just go with it. But it wasn't until we actually left Portugal, so from our last hotel going back to the airport, it only cost us about 10 euros. So that's when we determined that, okay, this guy definitely took us for a ride, no pun intended. So that's another tip that I would have for you if you're traveling in general, but if you're going to travel to Lisbon, I would just make sure that you know your way around as much as you can. Just know how long it would take to get from this place to that place and how much that would cost you, because unfortunately, that's just what happens when you travel. If you look like a tourist, you might have people that are going to try and take advantage of you. So I would say just know where you're going, know the distance between the places and the approximate cost. But aside from the Uber rides, we did try and walk everywhere. Lisbon is a very walkable city. However, it is full of hills. It's just hill after hill after hill. I would bring comfortable walking shoes. For my ladies, I know we want to look cute. We want to bring our wedges, our heels, but here, I think it's really important to consider function over fashion. It's really important that you have comfortable walking shoes because you'll be doing a lot of walking. There were so many times by the end of our day, by the end of where we were trying to get to where we were getting, my husband and I would literally be out of breath. But I will say by the end of our trip in Lisbon, my cardio was way up. I felt a little firmer, a little tighter from all the walking, but you got to bring comfortable walking shoes. And also the city is just full of cobblestone. cobblestone. So it's important that you do have comfortable shoes to avoid any injuries. I would say that the main attractions in Lisbon are all of the old castles, and there are so many of them, and they're located all over the city. They're huge, they're breathtaking. The architecture is just gorgeous. So if you're going to Lisbon, I would say visiting at least one castle is an absolute must. You have to see it. Most of the castles were paid entry. However, you can pay in person or you can pay online. Just be prepared if you do want to pay in person, you'll probably be waiting in line. So for the sake of convenience, if you can, I would pay online. I don't remember the exact pricing, but it wasn't anything too outrageous. Of course, my husband and I, we did purchase 2 adult entry passes and you can spend the whole day there. But like I said, it wasn't anything too outrageous. The city itself is quite old. It definitely serves up a historical vibe. You know, it's got the cobblestone roads, the masonry buildings, its signature red clay rooftops, and it's built on these hills. So I'm gonna take this opportunity to reiterate that it's really important that you bring comfortable walking shoes. It's function over fashion. You will be doing a lot of walking and you'll be walking uphill. Walking uphill leads me to my next point. Lisbon is full of what they call miradouros. I'm sorry if I butchered that. I will put the name of everything I mentioned in the description below, but it's basically viewpoints that are located all over the city. So you can go to these viewpoints and you can get amazing aerial views of the city, and they're absolutely breathtaking. I think my husband and I only got to see maybe 4 or 5, but there's something like 30 plus, and they're just located all over the city. So that's definitely a must. You have to check out these viewpoints. Next thing I want to talk about is the food. So if you are like my husband and I, food is really important when selecting somewhere to travel to. We are really big foodies, so we did some research and we wanted to make sure that Lisbon would offer us some great dishes. So Lisbon is known for its seafood. Neither of us are really big seafood people. I mean, we'll eat it, but we don't go crazy for it. Because of its proximity to the coast, however, it is very fresh seafood. I think that they are known for the codfish. I did end up trying that on the first night and I wasn't blown away. I mean, it was decent, but I wasn't like, oh my God, I have to write home about it. My husband steered clear of it because he just does not like seafood at all. We were able to try a really good burger joint on our first night there, and it was absolutely delicious. That was located in the first neighborhood that we stayed in, and that was Chiado. And at one point, my husband did have some really good oxtail as well. But with that being said, we did try and avoid tourist traps. You can always tell if it's a tourist trap, if you will, if the menus are in English or if they have pictures of the food beside the items. Because we wanted a very authentic experience, we tried to avoid these places, but you know, different strokes for different folks. If this sounds like something you want to do, then by all means, you will definitely find something that suits your flavor profile. And since my husband is Chinese, we had the bright idea to try a Chinese restaurant. I don't even remember the name of it, but honestly, we can call it Disappointment. We got there, we put our name on the list, and it was over a 2-hour wait. So remember I said my husband and I love to eat. We actually ended up going to another restaurant in the meantime. We got a full meal. It was really delicious, just burger and fries. And then they called our phone. We did go. It was just very underwhelming. It was disappointing. And when I look back on it, I don't even know why we were so hell-bent on trying Chinese food in Portugal. And also, my husband is Chinese. We have authentic Chinese food all the time. We didn't enjoy the food, but the vibe was really nice. On our last night in Lisbon, we came across a little quaint bar. It was called Grau Douro. I will put that down in the description below. But we were greeted by a very nice, warm, accommodating owner. His name was Oscar. He was funny, he was knowledgeable. He was also great at playing the piano accordion. After talking to him, we discovered that he was also from Toronto. So it was nice to have that commonality. And he just made our last night very memorable. He was so funny. He was just great. He was very great at his job. So I'm going to put that down in the description. And if you will be in Lisbon, I urge you to please check this place out. You will not be disappointed. But I would say our absolute favorite thing about the food in Lisbon was the brunch. I don't know what it was, but it was just tastier. There was something about it. The ingredients were more fresh. The coffee was strong. The salad was tastier. So that was really nice. We looked forward to it every single morning. Actually, not morning. It was more like the afternoon. We found that many businesses didn't open until noon. And the people in Lisbon, they would party until the early hours of the morning. Of course, my husband and I were in bed by 11 p.m. In North America, we're so used to that hustle and bustle culture, the go, go, go. You know, your alarm goes off at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and you hit the ground running and you don't stop until you get home until 7, 8, 9 p.m. However, in Lisbon, people were slow moving. Everything was more take your time, and the vibe was just get to it when you get to it. And that was really nice. Once we got used to it, it was great. That's something to be wary of if you're traveling to Lisbon, especially from North America. There is that difference there where people tend to take their time, where things are a little bit slower. And as a piggyback off of that, in terms of food, I have to talk about their pastiche. I became addicted to this little dessert. They're basically little custard tarts, if you will, and I think I had maybe 3 or 4 a day with our morning coffee. They were absolutely delicious, and you can find them everywhere all over the city. Of course, when we came back to Toronto, I was still so addicted to them that I wanted to try them here, and it was a complete disappointment. There's nothing like the real deal. So I haven't had any since we've been back after that. I will say if custard tarts sound good to you, then you have to try the pastiche and you will 110% not be disappointed. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we didn't just stay in Lisbon. We actually spent some time in Sintra, which is about a 45-minute train ride from Lisbon. And I do have to mention that getting around Lisbon, and I want to say Portugal, is quite inexpensive. So a return train ticket from Lisbon to Sintra only cost us about 10 euros. Sintra was tranquil, to say the least, and even though it was tranquil, it was definitely a tourist town. We went there to see the castles, which were absolutely amazing. They were gorgeous. We spent, I think, almost an entire day on the grounds. There was so much to see. They had beautiful gardens, beautiful architecture. So that was really, really nice. We stayed in a villa at the top of a lush mountainside, and it just so happened that my husband and I were the only people staying there at that time. So we basically had the whole terrace to ourselves, which was really, really special. The only downside of Sintra that I could think of was the fact that it wasn't the easiest to get around. There were so many instances where we would call an Uber and we could see the Uber on our phone kind of circling around on the map, and then they would just cancel it. Like at one point, we were stuck at the top of a mountain after seeing a castle. There were no Ubers that would come up there, and we just happened to befriend a guy who had like a tuk-tuk, if you will, and he offered to drive us back down to the main part of Sintra. So that was really nice, but I do have to say that it wasn't the easiest to get around Sintra if you don't have a car. Some other spots worth mentioning include the LX Factory, which is basically just a repurposed area where they sell art. They have clothing stores, bookstores, record shops. It's a very artsy area. And to be honest, my husband and I found it kind of underwhelming, so we didn't spend too much time there. There's also Pink Street, which is in Chiado, which I mentioned at the beginning of the video, which is a bustling area, if you will, full of nightlife. However, it wasn't our favorite area. We found that we were always accosted by people trying to sell us illegal substances. When this happened, we wouldn't even respond to them. You just keep walking, and they're harmless. They won't do anything to you. It wasn't our favorite area, and we didn't spend too much time there. However, you would have to walk through that area to get to the Time Out Food Market, which is a huge market that offers a bunch of different restaurants. Depending on what you're feeling that day, you may be able to find something to your liking. That's definitely something to check out too. We didn't have an actual meal there, but we did get a bunch of desserts and they were delicious. I definitely did get some pastiche there. And like I said, it was great. But I would check out the Time Out Food Market. It is a sight to see. It is very nice. It was huge. You'll more than likely find something that you like. Outside of that, we spent some time at the Tour de Belém, the National Coach Museum, the Lisbon Cathedral, the Augusta Arch. There is so much to see in Lisbon. My husband and I spent a total of 8 days there, but I would say we could have easily spent another week in Lisbon. There's so much to see, so 100% I would recommend the city, especially if you have a limited amount of time. I know as North Americans, when we're traveling to Europe, you want to go there for at least 2 weeks because you want to be able to hop from destination to destination, but we just didn't have that time because of constraints with work. So that's another reason why we chose Lisbon, is because there's just so much to see, and you could spend 10 days in Lisbon alone. If you choose Lisbon, you will not be disappointed, you will not be bored. So Lisbon was great. The food, the sights, the sounds, the architecture, the vibe. I had so much fun. It was my first time in Europe, so I didn't really know what to expect. And I didn't know what to expect in terms of racism. Of course, you hear stories, so this was something that was on my mind. With me being a Black woman, and like I mentioned, my husband was Chinese, that introduced another layer of travel as people of color. Being Black and Chinese, that's generally not a pairing that you see too often. So I would say back home in Toronto, we do get stares. In Lisbon, we got stared at a lot. Like they were so taken aback by us, like almost jaw on the floor. I wouldn't say we experienced covert racism, people being openly racist to us, but I would just say that we got a lot of stares, and sometimes they would make me uncomfortable. My husband is way more laid back in the sense that, like, you know, don't let them get to you, who cares, don't let them ruin our experience. And at first, you know, it would really bother me because I'm like, what are you looking at? We're just two humans trying to have fun. Towards the end of the trip, I kind of took a page out of his book, and I was just like, whatever, if you want to stare at us, stare at us. Maybe this is what Beyonce feels like. But in terms of covert racism, luckily we didn't have that experience. I would just say people, they stared at us a lot, and it was uncomfortable for me in the beginning, but I quickly got used to it. It was able to shift my mindset and not allow those stares to bring us down. I can't speak to what it's like for the rest of Europe. I have heard some really, really bad stories. In Lisbon, for myself, traveling with my Chinese husband, we didn't experience any covert racism, and I'm really thankful for that. And one last thing I will mention is that most people in Lisbon, we found, they speak English. So that was really nice. I mean, I do feel that it is common courtesy when you're traveling to another country to just become familiar with really common phrases in that native tongue. So whether that be thank you, you're welcome, hello, good morning, good night. Those are always nice phrases to have under your belt. But most people in Lisbon did speak English, which was really, really nice. There you have it, you guys. That is my experience in Lisbon, Portugal. I would go back in a heartbeat. I would tell my family, my friends, you out there, I would tell you to go experience it. It was great. It was so much fun. 10 out of 10 would recommend. But I want to see what you have to say. Have you been to Lisbon, or have you traveled to Europe in general as a person of color, and what was your experience there? Please leave a comment. I would love to read it. As always, please like, subscribe, and share for more content like this. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.